When you hear the name Bill Gates today, you probably think global health, philanthropy, that kind of thing. But rewind the clock a bit, and you get a very different Bill Gates. Today, we're diving into the story of the tech titan who built an absolute empire and became the ultimate final boss of the 90s. So, to really get this story, you've got to see these two faces, these two sides of the coin. On the one hand, yeah, the philanthropist we know today. But on the other, the final boss of the tech world. This was the Bill Gates who didn't just want to compete, he was playing for total domination. And his whole journey to the top, it kicked off with one of the boldest, most audacious moves in the history of business. I mean, just let that sink in for a second. This one sentence captures the absolute genius and, frankly, the sheer nerve that launched Microsoft. Imagine walking into one of the biggest companies in the world and selling them something you don't even have yet. So, the big question is, how on earth did he pull that off? Well, that brings us to how this whole monopoly was actually built. The culture at early Microsoft was, legendary for its intensity. It was a world of what they called intellectual knife fights, just the sharpest minds in the world battling it out to outthink, outmaneuver, and outcode everybody else. And right at the heart of it all was Gates's master strategy. Okay, so here's the play-by-play of this ultimate bluff. Step 1, IBM comes knocking. They need an operating system for their brand new PC. Gates competently strolls in and secures the deal, promising them an OS he doesn't actually have. Step 2, he immediately turns around and buys an existing, kind of basic OS from a small Seattle company. And for the final move, step 3, he rebrands it as MS-DOS. But here, and this is the masterstroke, instead of selling it to IBM outright, he licenses it to them. This meant he kept the rights to sell that same software to everyone else making PCs. That single move basically invented the modern software business and paved the road for total market domination. Now, when you build an empire that big, that fast, you're going to attract some attention. By the late 90s, the US government decided Microsoft had gotten way too powerful, and that led to a truly historic confrontation. We're talking about a clash of the titans, the world's biggest tech company going head-to-head with the world's most powerful government. And if you're wondering why the government stepped in, well, look no further than this number. At its peak, Microsoft Windows was running on over 90% of PCs on the planet. Think about that. It wasn't just a product, it was like the digital air that everyone breathed. That number wasn't just market leadership. To the government, that was the very definition of a monopoly. So the stage was set, right? The battle lines were drawn. In one corner, you had the US Department of Justice, armed with a century of antitrust law. And in the other corner, Microsoft, defended by an army of the sharpest lawyers around and led by the final boss himself. And this really brought up a huge question for everyone watching. When your opponent is the one who literally wrote the rules for this new digital world, how do you possibly challenge them with old world tools? The government was about to find out that this was not going to be some typical legal fight. Honestly, this is the perfect way to describe what happened. The Department of Justice, they came prepared for a knife fight, a traditional case built on legal precedent and dusty law books. But Microsoft, they turned the whole courtroom into a battle of code with complex software demos and technical arguments. It was a laser grid fight. And the regulators, well, they just weren't equipped for it. So, after all the smoke cleared, what was left? What was the real legacy of this epic showdown? Because the battle didn't just end with a verdict. Oh no, its shockwaves completely reshaped the entire tech landscape for a generation to come. Okay, so let's break down the aftermath. In the end, Microsoft wasn't broken up, but its power was checked. Its business practices got restricted. And that legal distraction, you could argue it created just enough breathing room for new companies, like Google, to rise up without getting crushed. And maybe most importantly, this whole thing created the playbook for every single government versus big tech fight we see today. Seriously, the arguments about Microsoft bundling its web browser, you hear the exact same echoes in the cases against today's tech giants. Which leaves us with this final thought to chew on. When you look at the giants of today, the Googles, the Amazons, the Metas, and all the regulatory battles they're facing, you have to ask yourself, was that epic fight against the original final boss the moment that actually wrote the rules for the game they're all forced to play now? It's a question that connects the 90s directly to the headlines we're all reading today.